And that gets us to today's end of season review. We're going to do Erik Brannstrom, Travis Hamonic, and Nick Holden. But let's start with the franchise. I mean, when you have a nickname like that, as coined on Locked On Senators by Joey Decord, you have to live up to the hype. And the hype started from the moment he was traded to Ottawa. He was the captain of Sweden's World Junior team, had 4 goals in 5 games, was traded for Mark Stone, and then immediately looked so good in Belleville. Pilsy, you and I were boots on the ground, working the games. He was smooth, he was steady, and he actually is a better defensive defenseman than people had given him credit for at that level. And it took a while at the NHL level. There were a few mistakes. I think some people would label us anti-Brannstrom, which I think is extremely wrong.
Ross, if anything, Brannstrom is probably the guy you and I have had the biggest difficulty placing him whenever we do rankings or anything. And I always push back saying Brandy's got to be higher, Brandy's got to be higher. And I'm still a Brannstrom guy.
Well, you can see that based on our organizational value rankings that we do every year. The first time we did, I'm pulling it up right now because
He was high.
He was so high on that list. And I mean,
maybe even top 5.
He was still in tier 2 this past year. Or sorry, he was in tier 3 and he was actually at the bottom of tier 3, but he also didn't have a contract at that time. And we do take that into account. I'm confident in saying he's going to be moving right back up. We had him at 24 last year, Pilsy. That was probably a little bit low.
Yep.
But again, he didn't have a contract. So we were like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, we had no clue what was going to happen, yeah.
The years before, we had him at 7th and 5th.
Yep.
We are high on Erik Brannstrom. We think that he's going to bring a lot. However, he turned out to bring a lot in areas we didn't expect him to. If you had told me this guy would be out on the penalty kill and doing well, I would have said, wait, you mean power play, right? No. He has turned himself in to a defensive defenseman who can still skate the puck out of the zone, be a one-man breakout, and we know that Branny also moves pucks. I'm happy that he finally was able to get some points at the end of the year as well, because that has to weigh on your confidence too, Pilsy. As Erik Brannstrom, here, read off his stats here, and then I want your take on his last season.
Yeah, so for Erik Brannstrom this season, he hit a lot of career highs, Ross. Career high in games played, 74. Career high in points, 18. His best plus minus at a +5. And then there was one more. I forget which one it is. But he also, but the funny thing is,
penalty killing time on ice.
Penalty killing time on ice, 111 minutes. But his average time on ice is down. It's actually the lowest of his career, other than 19 and 20, where he played 1451. This year, he averaged 16 minutes and 7 seconds. And that was one of those things Meth was saying. He was saying, look, guys, the issue with Erik Brannstrom, or one of the issues I have with him on this team, is for him to have success, he needs to be playing more than 16 minutes of ice time, and he's not going to be able to do that with the top 4 that this team has constructed now. And I think that's a valid argument. And Brannstrom, what's impressed me the most is when he came to Belleville, it was all about the offense. He can move the puck, he can skate, he's got great hands. And then, much like many young prospects going to the NHL, you realize, oh crap, these are men, and it's very tough for me to do what I did in lower leagues and in junior. I can't do that. So he had to make an adjustment, and he plays much better defensively now. He's a guy that's on the penalty kill, and his main focus isn't power play and points like we assumed it would be. So I give a lot of credit to Erik Brannstrom, a smaller, young guy that had to really change the way he approaches the game. And Ross, we got a fan grade of B. 64.6% of the fans gave him a B. I'm giving Brandy a B+ this year. I thought he played really well, and I'll pass it off to you before I get into some of the more advanced analytics that I liked from Brandy this year.
Wow, teeing up some stats. All right. Well, I'll go with a very basic stat for you, Pilsy, but it's also one that I think is important to get his confidence back. I mentioned the points. In the first 45 games this season, sample size is quite large.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
He had 4 points.
Ross, he had a 25-game stretch with 0. None of them.
In his final 29 games, he had 14 points. Okay? Like, if he can even sustain that, where he's averaging still like around 17 minutes, of course, he ended off with a lot of ice time. as he
Okay.
has in years past because Thomas
Yeah.
Chabot has failed to finish the last 3 seasons. He's gotten hurt at the end of the year. So he averaged almost 20 minutes in April in the last 7 games. But that aside, you're looking at a guy who I think his confidence is there. He's now able to know that he's a good hockey player, which he's always been, but there's that adjustment period. I think it's just been a little bit longer for him. I really, really hope he's back next year. It would be a shame to develop him as long as you have, and then you finally get to see the fruits of your labor of 4 years of developing this guy, and then just to walk. It wouldn't make any sense. He's an RFA right now, needs a new contract. I think that he probably wants a 1-year deal, because if he's seeing the step he took this year, if he's like, hey, if I can take another step next year, and you're never hoping for injury, but if he's like, if I could slide into that top 4, even for a small sample, well, he's a year closer to unrestricted free agency. And then if he wants to pursue a higher opportunity, then maybe he looks to be a top 4 defenseman. But I think a 1-year deal at around 1.2, $1.3 million, best for both sides. The Sens get a cheap bottom pair option that can move into the top 4 if need be. A guy who's proven that he's willing to change his style to fit the team. I just think that it would be a real shame to let him go, and I hope that he's back.
I have no feeling or inclination that he won't be back, Ross. It's the Ottawa Senators have way too much leverage right now. Like as long as Erik Brannstrom is an RFA, in my mind, he has a lot of value for this team.
And he also is arbitration eligible. So that's a nice wrinkle here, but they don't often look at the deep analytics that I'm going to throw back to you with. They look at the fact that, hey, why does he only have 16, 18 points in a full season? Why did he go so long before kind of even reaching this? I think it would actually be a very interesting arbitration case.
Oh,
I'd love to be a fly on the wall. What do you think
yeah.
he'd ask for? In an arbitration, they always go way high. Like 2?
Yeah, he's probably shooting for 2.
And they're asking for 1?
Yeah. And then I figure they meet in the middle at 1.5.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
I'm
so.
happy with Brandy at 1.5.
Same.
Absolutely.
Hit
Absolutely.
me with these analytics.
So what I wanted to go at is if you go to naturalstattrick.com and you go to defensive pairs and you go to the Ottawa Senators, Erik Brannstrom, every time his name comes up with the defenseman that he's played more than 10 minutes with the exception of Nikita Zaitsev, please allow me to have a Nikita Zaitsev clause. Will you allow it?
Yes, allowed.
Yeah, Nikita Zaitsev clause allowed. Okay. Every single defense partner he's had above 10 minutes, Nikita Zaitsev clause, their Corsi percentage is above 50.
Is it better with him than without him?
I have not had my stat research team go through those stats, but what the research team, being myself, had found is that no matter who you put him with, he had positive Corsi numbers. So it just goes to show that like this is a guy that, despite being someone with high expectations in the Mark Stone trade, a high draft pick. You mentioned all his accolades in junior and Sweden and everything. Despite all that, he's been able to kind of humble himself and realize where he's at, but still be productive and still be efficient in a smaller role than us. And I'm sure he would have anticipated. So that's why I'm so high on Brandy, is because when we didn't have a top 4, I was disappointed in him, Ross, because we needed him to be a top 4 guy. Now this team's got their top 4. We don't need him to be that guy. We need him to be an effective bottom pair that can be elevated into any role, 5-on-5, left, right shot, power play, shorthanded at any given moment. And he is that guy. So like I mentioned in my rant with Meth, the key word for me with Erik Brannstrom is his versatility. And in a team that finally has a top 4 locked up for at least a couple of years here, there's nothing more important than having your 5-tool versatility guy in my mind. So Erik Brannstrom, I like him. I like Brandy. All right. I don't care who knows it, Ross.
And if you do look, Pillsy, my research team is on it.
Oh, okay.
Almost every player on the back end has a better Corsi, shot attempts for versus against, the percentage of which you're on the ice for, with him than without.
Yep.
Example, Jacob Chychrun, in 20 minutes, small sample, I know. We'll get to some bigger samples after. In 20 minutes together, they're 68.7%.
Yeah, I loved Chychrun and Brandy.
Without Brannstrom, Chychrun's Corsi percentage was 50. 18%.
Yep.
That's huge. Now, you said that he was with, who did he play the most with last year?
Nick Holden
Nick Holden. Okay.
by a mile.
Together, they were 55.6.
Yep.
Holden without Brannstrom, 48.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do this exercise all day. Brannstrom makes his partner better. And I need to see him not only next season, I need to see him paired with Tyler Kleven, at least for
Yeah.
a bit, because I love that in a small sample. And you know us, we're yin and yang guys on this show.
Well, oh no, actually, Tyler Cleven and Branson were good in a small sample. It was Branny and Lassie that was the exception to the rule. That's why I did the 10-minute mark.
Verbal meme for Lassie, Magic Johnson. He ain't gonna be here.
Probably not. Yeah. Yeah.
Who do you want to see Erik Brannstrom paired with next season?
I mean,
Could be the next guy that we get to as well.
the thing is, Ross, by process of elimination, if Travis Hamonic is indeed brought back, it's got to be Travis Hamonic because we've already identified our top four, and I don't think there's any reason why those top four guys should not be in the top four.
Well, I think you get into a case where it's like, if you have Hamonic in the Nick Holden role, the two guys are going to get to where it's like he's the seventh and comes in. Then if Kleven comes into camp and he earns a spot, I have no problem with Hamonic being the 7 guy. And you know he's going to play the role well. You know he's well liked in the locker room, all that. I don't think that's going to mess with any sort of chemistry. I think he'll be there to kind of, hey, mentor Tyler Kleven, just like we tweeted along the Sens wanted this whole time.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced that Clevin will get a spot out of camp, but that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, exactly. I was trying to tease that a little more, but yes, we will be getting into that tomorrow. Travis Hamonic and Erik Brannstrom played 57 minutes together. They had a Corsi for percentage of 61.74. So that's a pair that can work in third bottom pair minutes. So it wouldn't be my most ideal partner for Erik Brannstrom, but that would allow him to let Brandy cook a little bit more when you've got a guy in Travis Hamonic that is not going to be ideally bringing the puck up the ice. Erik Brannstrom. One thing of like Erik Brannstrom, if there was a stat, well, I'm sure there is a way to look at this statistically, but he was so damn effective at starting with the puck behind his own net, bringing it up the ice, and taking a shot on the goalie and leading to an offensive faceoff. He did that so many times with ease. Now, of course, you're like, well, that's what is that really? But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if you're able to start with the puck in your own end, nobody else, you don't need help from anyone else. You bring it up the ice, and now you've got not only possession in the offensive zone, but you've created a faceoff. You can get a line change, get your top line out there, the guys you want out there in the O zone. That adds value, and Erik Brannstrom was able to do that with ease.
Well, he had 1 goal in his last 28 games of the season, but that goal was exactly that, where he
Yeah, that was sick.
Went up and just absolutely ripped one. That was in the first of the 2 7-goal wins against Tampa Bay. Unreal there. So Erik Brannstrom, let us know in the comments. Obviously, it's a polarizing topic, but I just think he's a perfect number 5 defenseman that can move up in the case of injury and whatnot. So I just don't want it to be like Matt said, where it's like Rasmus Sandin gets traded. Sure, you get a good return. Sandin then just explodes offensively, and it's like, wait, you had that. I don't know. I think he's better than trading him for futures. I really, really do.
I think for as long as he's an RFA, yes, that's the case. If he becomes a UFA, that's where things get a little tricky.